The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is briefing the media ahead of their elective conference. Let's take you live there.
People are coming to say, I did not register because I wasn't there, I was at work. I may change delegates and all of that. Otherwise, the rest of the delegates should be a very smooth and seamless work where they walk in, pick up their tag, show their identity and sign, and then proceed to conference. The head office of the ANC has informed us. Firstly, we have invited all members of the National Executive Committee to come from KwaZulu-Natal as the guest of the Provincial Executive Committee and non-voting delegates. But we will also be joined by the leadership of the National Executive Committee members who are deployed to KwaZulu-Natal, who have always been with us for the past 4 years. And the Acting Secretary General has also made an additional deployment, I think of about 4, if not 10 members of the NEC, who will be complementing the deployees who have been with us for the past 4 years. The NEC members from KwaZulu-Natal are invited by us as a Provincial Executive Committee because they are our leadership. So when we meet in such a big political school, we thought it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that they too join that session and participate, because when KZN shines, it also makes all of them to be worth what they are as the leadership of the ANC. And when there are challenges in the province, it obviously also would impact negatively on them as our national leadership. So we are with them when it's nice, we are with them when there are difficulties, and that is why we've invited them to come. The Acting Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Paul Mashatile, we were informed by the SGO that he's the one who's going to officially open the conference tomorrow. We are working very hard to ensure that the conference begins at 10 o'clock, that if we are late, at least we should start at 11 o'clock latest. The reason why we think and believe that is possible is because the setup we've made for registration allows that within a space of 2 hours, we have the capability to process at least up to 1,000, minimum of 1,000 delegates. That is why we say if comrades arrive at 9, at 7 o'clock as we've indicated, by 9 o'clock they will all be registered. In case others are late, at least by 10 o'clock everybody must be registered. But of course, once we have 80% or more of delegates registered, the plenary of conference will begin and let the rest who are still being processed by the registration to have their work being done. Let me end by saying that we've also invited our alliance partners, the Communist Party, COSATU, we've invited the YCL, we've invited COSA's traditional leaders, we've invited many other sectors of society, business people. Some of them are going to come for the first day. These categories I'm mentioning: MKMVA, deputy ministers and ministers who are coming from KwaZulu-Natal, chairpersons of portfolio committee, because these are deployed cadres of the ANC, heads of departments. These are comrades that are at the helm of the state transformation. So if we were to regard anyone as part of what Walter Sisulu used to call midwives of social transformation, they are the ones, because they need to know the attitude and the position of delegates with regard to policies that we're implementing and that which we may need to evolve in order to change the lives of our people for the better. So that is why we invited all of them, not just to have an insight, but to contribute, given their own experience and given their own responsibilities that they have to the movement and the people of KwaZulu-Natal. So, Comrade Mahloba, I think that is, in essence, what we thought we need to give an update about. And as I said, we are more than ready, very excited. You know, it's very interesting to go to the last PEC and have everybody jovial, everybody understanding that we are going to the conference, a democratic meeting of the ANC, and we are all prepared to go to it and let it succeed, contribute to its success, including at the end of it supporting collectively the leadership that will emerge from that conference. Because we know that anything contrary to that would not only pose a threat to the ANC, but to the agenda that the ANC represents. And that agenda is not about us, it's about the people of KwaZulu-Natal, and of course about the people of South Africa as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mpemba. There is the inputs, colleagues. We'll allow platform for questions, comments, if there are any, but I think it was standard and clear. We can close it and we go.
Not so quick.
If there are any questions, we'll raise your hand. You introduce your media house, or to introduce ourselves. Because abanye mask, so we might not see and know who is who. And yeah, the floor is yours. It's about number 1, okay, number 2, number 3, number 4, about number 5, okay, in that sequence.
Everyone, my name is Rube Umpele. I'm from Tanzania. So as I've heard you, Mr. Duli, saying that you will be holding a conference tomorrow. So there were threats or there were rumors saying that if it happened that the party's leader, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, will be arrested as per instruction of those ANC supporters. So where do you place the threats of your leader coming here in Durban on Sunday? As it been reported by the media saying that Mr. Zizirodo will first confirm the safety of the president to come here in KZN. So at the party, so what is your take on that?
Okay, number 2.
I made business, you can answer.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Yes. So
Kotato.
Yes.
Yes.
Remember, you say you reflected on a lot of things in your last PEC. What was your view as the PEC on the issue of political killings in the province? Do you think, is it your view that they have gone down, they've remained? Have you made any progress on dealing with the issue of political killings in the province? And of course, maybe secondly, the issue of Zandile Gumede does come up. She has been nominated, she's on a few slates, but there's a letter from the acting Secretary General, Paul Mashatile, which clearly bars those who are criminally charged from contesting. Did you discuss that? And where is the province on that issue? Thank you.
Number 3.
Mpemba and Mklama from the SABC. I just want to quickly get the invitations. Is the president going to come, either to close the conference or at least be part of the conference in any way? Former President Jacob Zuma, have you extended an invite to him? And then you've got 1,600 voting delegates. Can you just give me the current membership of the ANC in the province? How many members do you have in the province?
Number 4, 5.
Yeah, it's climbing over
4.
Witness, yeah. The provincial secretary highlighted the achievements of the outgoing PEC, which also include that stabilizing what was otherwise a volatile situation in the ANC in KZN. There used to be these clashes and all those kind of things. So I just want to get a kind of an understanding to say, while those achievements could be remarkable, how do you reconcile that with the fact that you also lost a number of municipalities in the KZN?
Okay. Koka, you are the last one.
I'm pretty much covered by Clive, but I was going to ask Mpemba the same thing. I'm Zipamandla Koke from ENCA. You highlighted your successes, but also 2019, immediately after being elected in 2018, we did not do well in the general election. 2021, you performed dismally in the 2021 local government elections. You seem to be downplaying those challenges. Is it something that the PEC reflected on, especially with 2024 coming up, that the new task for the leadership that will be elected this coming weekend will have to be focusing on 2024, saving the ANC from losing power in KZN? Perhaps my question is, are you worried about the prospects of the ANC losing power in 2024 in KwaZulu-Natal?
That was the first round. Oh, okay.
If you can just squeeze me in,
Okay.
My name is Simphiwe Makanya from the SABC. My question is basically linked to what Siphamanda was asking. And in view of the so-called slates that have been circulating on social media, I mean, is the party not worried that there seems to be no consensus in terms of who exactly should be leading the party with only a few years or maybe months to go before the national elections?
Okay. Thank you. Those are the questions for the first round.
Well, I think thanks for the questions, and let me start with the first question about whether are we concerned about the threat for the president being arrested. In this country, if there is a reason for anybody to be arrested, you can be arrested anywhere. You don't have to be in a specific province to be arrested, because the police are police. They work everywhere in the country. And I'm aware that the question arises from the fact that there was a certain mobilization that was going on calling for the president to be arrested by certain people. But I don't think that is a matter that we should be concerned about, because the president is in the Republic of South Africa. And wherever he is, there are police. And I don't think that we should be worried that the only time anyone, including our president, can ever be arrested in this country is when they're in KZN. So for me, the matter really doesn't, it's not even part of what was part of our own imagination as a problem. It doesn't arise. On the issue of the killings, I'm sure you would have made your own observations. The process of selection of candidates in 2016, just before that process, during it and immediately after it, I think the ANC lost close to 20 comrades at that time, who were brutally assassinated on their way or from the meetings of the ANC, on the way to or from the meetings of the ANC, or others at home without necessarily having gone to any meeting of the ANC. But if you compare that with what has now happened in the past two elections, especially the local government election, the situation has been quite different, very, very different. And our own view is that, firstly, we attribute that difference, that change in that situation, to the fact that the level of tension within the African National Congress, especially in KwaZulu-Natal, drastically went down after the provincial conference in 2018. If you remember, that provincial conference did not elect a slate, by the way. It elected the leadership that had been the choice of different groups in the province. That is why we were able to provide leadership to every board and all organs of the ANC in a manner that left everybody not only convinced but prepared to follow the leadership, because they could identify with the leadership that was elected in the conference. So I think, yes, we are worried about what had happened. There are comrades who were killed. I think some of them in Ward 54, if I'm not mistaken, during the time of those selection processes. But the comparison in terms of what had happened in the past, in our view, the situation is quite different today. Not that it's correct for one person to pass away or to be killed. We want nobody to be killed, let alone those who are associated with activities of the ANC. But the fact that there's been a very significant decline to that challenge leaves us with a sense of confidence that we're turning the tide in the battle against that scourge of killing. The issue of Zandile Gumede being nominated, you see, there is many of us who are nominated by many structures of the ANC, and those nominations, many of them have happened without us being consulted. It is only at the plenary of conference where a nominated comrade will have to stand up and say, I accept or I decline. And usually you are not required to give reasons why you are declining, but others do volunteer reasons and say the reason why I'm declining is because I support so and so instead of me in that position. But it's really not a requirement. So it will be very difficult. In the first place, we don't know at this stage who qualified to be a nominated candidate. It's only when the Electoral Commission, led by the National Executive Committee, presents to plenary tomorrow afternoon that we will then know for sure who are the nominated comrades. And once that comes out, as I said, if you are at conference, you have to stand up and say, I accept nomination. If you are not in conference, the requirement is that there must be a way in which you confirm your availability or non-availability, which happens in the form of a written notification to the Electoral Commission. On the question of is the president going to come, the head office will tell us when the president is coming. When we invite the leadership, we invite the leadership on the basis that the SGO, it's like inviting us in the province for a regional conference. The PSO has to determine, based on the availability of leadership, who will go and address that particular conference. So from our own information at this stage is that we were told that the Treasurer General, the acting SG actually, is the one who's going to be opening a conference. But you see, the other thing that we've got to clarify, there is no requirement in the ANC that anyone, including the president, has to close a conference of the province. A conference is actually closed by the newly elected provincial chairperson. But it doesn't mean that if the president of the ANC and the leader of our movement becomes available on that day, having been unable to come on the opening session of the conference, he is then not allowed to come to the conference. But if he comes, he comes. If he doesn't come, he doesn't come. It doesn't mean when he's not there, it's because probably there's some fear around him coming, or there's something that we're violating in terms of our tradition in an event where the president or anybody doesn't come. It depends on the schedule of the leadership and what the head office would have decided should happen at a given moment. We are now close to, we've got, to be specific, 192,000 members in good standing of the ANC in the province at this stage. I think it was Ayanda was asking how many members.
Sorry, no, but I'll be there. 192,000.
Yes, members in good standing. In terms of those who in good standing and qualify for purposes of the conference. And then we've got 54,000 members who are in the membership system, have applied, have done everything that needs to be done, but the system, through the secretaries who manage it in branches, has not yet recorded them into the, the new system requires that you apply and your branch secretary must go to the system and accept you. So yesterday we got a report that there's about 54,000 something which has not been accepted. So those are members of the ANC, but who are not counted for purposes of this conference. So the overall total of our membership will be that 192 plus 54,000 odd, which will take you to about 240 to 40 something thousand members of the ANC in good standing in KwaZulu-Natal. In that way, I don't count membership in grace period, which is technically still a member in good standing, but you are in this period in which if you don't renew, you'll fall into the membership that is not in good standing. Yes, Goke and Clive, we have been very concerned about the electoral performance of the ANC. But when the PEC met in December last year, at the back of the local government elections, it would conduct a detailed assessment of our performance. We made certain observations which in our own view were what we define as factors that impacted negatively on the standing and the image of the African National Congress. What are those? The first one is that we went to an election campaign with an organization that did not have the basic unit of the ANC in good standing, which is the branch executive committee of the ANC. Because the ANC exercises leadership to society, not through the chair, the president, the provincial secretary, or the SG, through the basic unit of the ANC. It's the branch that, in terms of the strength of the branch and the quality of leadership of the branch, convinces the population in that area to vote for the African National Congress. You know, there are instances where people will say, well, we don't know Nhlakani Tumsen who are campaigning here. We know this one. He's our chair, he's our secretary, he's our council. He has always been with us. And the reason why we're going to vote is not because you came, it's because these ones we know, we live with them. They work amongst us. Now, when we went to these elections, I've been saying to people who are unscientific about the performance of the ANC, that in many respects, I think about 90% of the ANC branch executive committees were not in good standing. They were led by task teams. The same applies to regional executive committees of the ANC. And the PEC concluded that one of the weaknesses of a task team is that it lacks legitimacy. That's one problem. Because you are appointed, you are not elected. When you move around, people don't say, we were in a meeting or in a conference that elected this leader. You've got to introduce yourself to them because they were not there when you were elected, you got appointed. The first problem we identified was that the state of the ANC when we went to the elections was not the ANC that has always been in the past elections. And therefore, we needed to deal with that problem if we are to prepare and reposition the ANC effectively for 2024 national general elections. The second issue that we think South Africans must not lose sight of, we contested the elections at the time when the country and the rest of the world was engulfed by COVID-19. And someone was saying to me, but we were not alone in that. Yes, of course we were not, but we were a governing party. If you had plans in 2020 and 2021 to do certain projects, including rolling out infrastructure development, you couldn't do it because nobody was allowed to go out of their own houses. And if people say our road has been like this for a long time, they could not blame an opposition. That was an anger meted against the African National Congress, the governing party. If we can't see that as one of the factors that impacted negatively to the ANC's performance and reception of our people in 2021, then we always have been arguing the PC that then we are not scientific. Because any problem that occurs, which has got to do with governance or government matters, it's placed at the foot of the governing part of that time. And that problem of 2020, I mean the whole of 2020, from the time in March when we were on the state of disaster, up until almost the end of 2021, we all know people lost their jobs. Certain industries were collapsed. Some of them have never recovered. And nobody could be blamed except the government. That, you are making us to stay at home, we're losing our jobs, hotels are closing, the hospital industry has been decimated. Of course, that environment, that resentment in society could not be directed to anybody except the African National Congress. Nobody with their right mind stood up and say, these problems are because the opposition has decided that the country must be placed on the disaster. It was because of the ANC. But of course, you will remember that another difficult situation for us as KZN was the July unrest. That July unrest was not a small thing for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. At the time when President Zuma was incarcerated, we knew as a provincial executive committee, and we communicated this message publicly. Even before he was incarcerated, we communicated a very clear and unambiguous message publicly and said this was bound to have an impact to the African National Congress. Not because the ANC is Zuma. Zuma is part of the ANC. It's not an embodiment of what the ANC is about. But the fact of the matter is that was happening in our own space. There was a mobilization here which was led by many people, including some of those who were coming from the MKMVA. A major distraction on the ground in their own view to support or to stop anything that has got to do with incarceration of former President Zuma. We too, as a provincial executive committee, said this thing is not going to end well with the ANC in society. And our population is not very much understanding the distinction between the judiciary and government. There were instances where when you lead a campaign, people will say, you arrested Zuma. Because in their own minds, because you are a governing party, you are therefore responsible for what happens in the judiciary. To some extent, yes. The transformation of the judiciary is the responsibility of the governing party. But the governing party can't tell judges who to arrest and who not to arrest. It doesn't have that authority. But our people do not understand that. That is why even when there was a controversy about relating to the judgment facing the Shembe Church, one of the biggest institutions in our province, which is followed by millions and millions of our people, When they led a march to the city hall here, an ordinary person in society said, because we are frustrated with the judiciary, let's take the Berkeley or our own frustration to the government. And the government was local government. So in this case, it was Kaunda and his council. Because in their own understanding, the decision of court about who is legitimate or otherwise can be changed by the ANC leadership. You know, on one hand, I've been saying to people, you know, on one hand, it's very heartening for some of us who lead the ANC and who are genuine members of the ANC, that society can even believe that the ANC would find solution to any and every other complex challenge they face. Because that then displays a vote of confidence to the African National Congress. But that vote of confidence is not always easy to carry or live up to his own expectation, because in many respects it will be instances where the ANC has no capacity to change a decision. The ANC in this province was not in support of the incarceration of President Zuma, but we couldn't stop that. And I'm quite certain our national leadership themselves, they were very at pain to explain and to deal with the fact that one of the former leaders of the ANC, in a manner that he was incarcerated. But what do you do when the judges decided? We chose a path in this country that the judges take final decision. They're not interfered with by political position of political parties. It may very well be that it was a correct path, but to some extent it will impact on us, and it will impact on us as a governing party, in this case the African National Congress. So I'm giving this because you know, I always say it was not a small thing when such a big church lead a march and then the message says, you don't help us to solve this problem, we're going to meet you on the 1st of November. That's not a small message. That's not a small message for such a big institution in the province, which is followed by millions of our people. If anyone were to say that did not have any impact whatsoever to the ANC, firstly, that would be to undermine the church, the Shembe Church itself, that it has no impact in society. But secondly, to be unscientific, not to look at the conditions and the circumstances under which the ANC was actually pursuing a campaign. To some extent, already what was happening in Ndlunkulu was making difficult the province to be. You know, I always say to people, KZN, beside the population of KZN, you've got 3 other major institutions that which, if they are not stable, the province will be affected. One is the population of KZN, where every other institution draws up its own membership. The second one is the Zulu Kingdom. The third one is the Shembe Church, and of course, the other one is the African National Congress. You have instability in those big institutions with such a following in the province, you are bound to have problems. In one or the other, you are bound to have problems. So those are some of the factors that when we were analyzing, it may very well be that there are certain things that as a provincial leadership we did not do very well to deal with some of the challenges on the ground, as a consequence of which the ANC performed in the way it did. But I've heard some strange voices that are saying, no, all our problems, all our failure, we can attribute them to that provincial leadership. And I've been saying that is very unscientific, by the way. It's when you don't know what has happened, and because you can't explain it to yourself and the person next to you, you've got to look for a scapegoat or an easy solution to define what is otherwise a complex and a challenging environment. And that is why, which is my last point, even when we were dealing with the issue of the unrest in July, as a province we took a view that was saying this is much more complex than what meets the eye. And the ANC will have to apply itself politically and ideologically to understand what we're dealing with. Not what we're told by police, that there are 2 people who must be arrested, and once you arrest this one, the problem is solved. It's a much more deep-seated problem. What is it that makes people to accept that they can be mobilized into that direction? What's happening in society? The unemployment, poverty, inequality, how are those factors impacting on the way in which people process and deal with matters that confront them? The mind works and is impacted upon your living conditions. The material conditions determine the way in which you interpret and relate to the world outside you. If you are caught up in poverty and inequality, somebody open a shop, there's food to take you home, will you not do so? You will take it. I'm not worried about the slates. That's the last question. The slates that are punted in the media, many of them, there's something very interesting that I've been observing. Clearly, there are people who sit here, one person or two, and they say, no, I want to put my own line up and put it up. The ANC can't control that. Sometimes you yourself, as a leader of the ANC, you see yourself in a certain slate and nobody has ever consulted you. That, look, we think you can be part of a leadership. And when somebody says that to you, to me in particular, the next question I pose, who else do you think can complement whatever skills or talent you have identified on me in order to take the movement forward? Because before I say yes, I will consider I have to have a sense, who am I expected to work with? In your own view, as you approach me, what kind of talent and skill you want to combine? As a consequence of which we are going to have a solid leadership to take the movement to the next phase of our struggle. So some of our names are somewhere in the slates. You see yourself, you are a chair today, tomorrow you are a secretary. In another one, you are not included. You can't call and say you are missing me on that one. You can't, because you don't even know who's doing it. I think now that the conference is tomorrow, we will know really who are the people who are and why are they nominated by branches in the way that they are nominated. Yes, of course. I mean, it's part of you see, it's part of the negative campaign. Let me say something about this thing of defining some of our comrades as Angolas. Let me explain what this actually seeks to achieve. We went to a conference in 2018 at the back of the NASREC, 54th National Conference, where, for instance, myself and Tlakanipo belong to two different perspectives. He was part of the perspective that supported the election of Comrade President. I was part of the perspective that supported Comrade KZN. We came back from conference. We agreed in the province that we need each other in the PEC. Now, we transit the period of whether you are NTZ or CR, we work together in the PEC. Now that we are going to a new conference, we are being reminded that, no, you must go back to where you were 4 years ago. You must go back there, because when you associate others as Ankole, you are invoking what is happening in the media around the situation involving the president and his farm. And by extension, you are then saying these ones, they are close to the president. By the way, we should be concerned when there are others who are said not to be close to the leadership of the ANC. It's an elected leadership of the ANC. But the intention here is because there are people who survive when the ANC is divided. And the only way for them to be relevant in this coming conference, they have nothing, some of them, to offer in terms of where the NDR must go. But you just have to look at what is negative associated with this candidate so that my candidate is going to emerge. And then I've been very excited with some of our comrades who are standing firm. I saw Comrade Kaunda today. I mean, many of you will know Kaunda has been one of the outspoken and very critical leader in the province when it comes to what's happening in the national leader, including being critical about the president. To see him going out and say publicly, we need to choose a leadership, not a slate associated with a particular person, because these attachments are part of wanting to change the mentality of delegates and say to them, no, these ones, maybe they also own the Ankolis, they've got these Keklis and all of that. But delegates of the ANC are very matured. They know that ultimately the labels will not work. We need the quality of a leadership to take us forward. You may be part of a certain label, but you are not capable to take us to the next phase. They will leave you and go to the other one and pick the one they need, because they understand that we are undertaking a complex process of transforming our country. And it doesn't need people who don't understand where we must go and how we depart from the point where we're in today. So don't worry about the Ankoles. They are not worrying us at all. And some of us have chosen never to say anything about them in public. It's the first time that I thought I must reflect on it, because I think it's a diversion. It's a diversion, it's an agenda to say, we want you as KZN to stay where you are before 2018. There is no appreciation that if me and Tlakanipo were not agreeing in 2017, we are now agreeing. We should be building from that to move forward. The intention is that no, go back. We want you divided, which is the work of the counter-revolution. The counter-revolutionary forces want us to fight as if there is no tomorrow, get divided, lose power, governed by coalitions, very unstable. We are managing very difficult coalitions now. You must even agree to pass a budget. If they walk away, you can't pass a budget, so you can't provide service to you. Now, the agenda is very clear. If you want to defeat the ANC in South Africa, you must start in KZN. Disorganize those ones. They are going to be big, but that size will be meaningless because they will be fighting, and when they fight with one another, some strange elephants have a potential to take over the province. We can't allow that, and we are going to this conference. We are going to this conference very clear that we can't allow that. We have a task at hand, and our generation is not prepared to be part of those who are signing the death certificate of the African National Congress.
Thank you, Nopala. Those were the questions. If there are any others, we can allow one last round for a follow-up. Will be number 1. Oh, so now Pungola, number 2. Okay, let me do it this way. You'll be number 1, you'll be number 2, you'll be number 3, Upungula, you'll be number 4. Okay, Upungula will be the last one. As an elder. As an elder. Upungula will be the last one. What's that about? Can you also introduce yourself and the media platform where you're coming from?
I'm Sunday in the motor. I report for the Sunday when I produce my.
Okay.
Perhaps in Pemba, there's this admission that the leadership has already made that conferences, elective conferences, seemingly are becoming about specifically about electing leadership and not about discussing pertinent issues of the day. In your setting, did you deliberate on that? Just one question. Thank you.
Okay.
Tani from Newsroom Africa. I just wanted to ask, taking it back to your initial briefing, you're talking about the 3 disputes which you say are immaterial to the conference. If you can just give me a bit of insight in terms of what are those disputes in those 3 branches. And another thing we've noticed with the conferences of the ANC, that security seems to be heightened up. You've spoken a lot about July unrest, you speak a lot about the divisions in the province, you speak a lot about the slates. Because of the cloud in which you're having this conference, specifically in this province, have you also taken a page out of your colleagues from other provinces to heighten up the security? And are you concerned at all when it comes to seeing any threats of a security manner? Thank you.
Kakas.
From Kakas FM. Because you have touched on in the Palapa, so if we look back, the ANC has always said that they are fighting corruption, and the corruption, a command case was opened against President Cyril Ramaphosa. We had SACP, newly elected national chairperson who made a demand saying that other Fraser opening a case, why mind timing because of the election year or December. What would be your take, let's say any member of the society opening a case, would it be fair to say, why man opening a case instead of your information, and you are not even sure why it's finding the information? What would you say? Kulama comments while the ANC has been always saying we are fighting corruption. A criminal case has been opened. There's a Kamama leaders saying that no, why man? Is it because you are national elective conference? Another thing, the number of employees from KZN, Minister Pravin Gordhan, or Minister of Enterprises. Have you spoken to him about some challenges in SOEs, especially with ESCOM? Because we deploy yes, appoint the president, but he's from a KZN. Have you spoken to him about the challenges? Now, what was the outcome? Now.
Okay. Sivaleke umakade bona uphunguthi.
Isithwalano.
Hayi isithwalano siyam elevator.
All right, and so we come out of that ANC briefing, just giving us a heads up as to what we can expect for their elective conference this weekend.